Okay, looks like it is live. God, I hate this new software from YouTube. It's absolutely horrible. Okay, so my friend George Gammon has found another hidden government tax scheme, big government tax scheme involving the Trump administration, moving people into higher income tax brackets as part of Stagflate and Tax and Lie that was hidden in the Trump tax cuts. Well, I was watching the Tucker Carlson show last night, and a lot of people have actually said that the PPP loans, the Paycheck Protection Program loans, have benefited Main Street. Well, let's stop there, because it looks like, if this interview is accurate, and I'm going to play the clip, it's about 5 minutes long. This interview is accurate. This is another big government tax scheme involving the Trump administration and also both political parties in Congress, Republicans and Democrats, for Stagflate and Tax and Lie. This would be a part of the tax portion. So let's play this, and then I'll talk about the restaurant industry and the real economy.
Through the Payment Protection Program, the PPP, the federal government distributed more than $500 billion to keep businesses afloat. The numbers are staggering. And of course, it worked, at least in the short term, because throwing money at things does work in the short term. Tens of millions of jobs apparently were helped save. But now some businesses are complaining that Democrats in the Treasury Department are planning to tax them for expenses they paid for with their stimulus money. They say it could force thousands of businesses into bankruptcy. Is that true? It's complex, but we've got someone tonight who can explain it to us. Ray Washburne is a restaurant owner in Dallas, Texas. He's joined us before. We're happy to have him on tonight. So, Ray, this is complicated for those of us who don't run businesses, but bottom line it for us, what this means for people who run small businesses.
Well, Tucker, basically, the government mandated shutdown of us in March. I'm in the restaurant business. We had to lay off thousands of employees. In the entire restaurant industry alone, laid off 5 million people. The government's PPP program was put in place to give grants to businesses to hire people back while you're closed and to pay rents to landlords because you had no income to pay your rents. It all worked pretty well. I mean, 15% of restaurants nationwide are now closed. The program ended July 31st, and now the August surprise was the bait and switch of Congress and the Treasury Department coming back and saying, oh, this is no longer a grant. We're going to treat this as a forgivable loan, which means it is taxed. Most restaurants and small businesses or partnerships are going to be taxed at a personal level. And so what that's going to mean is a 30 to 50% tax hit on money that we use to do what the government asked us to do, and that was basically serve as the unemployment office for the United States government. It's just not fair. It's not right. It's not what was proposed to us. And it's really just seems like a government takeover of small business, because when you get into 2021 and our tax bill arrives and they say, oh, that was money given to you by Treasury, even though we use it as an expense, businesses in this country are just going to get crushed. And I don't think our viewer who took that PPP loan, 5 million PPP loans were given out in this country.
Yes.
And they're in for a rude surprise.
So what are those businesses going to do at that point, do you think? I mean, the federal government will have unprecedented control over them. That's what you're saying at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me tell you, if you're a business that is already shut down, but you took PPP money, you owe tax on that money. So if you're a small restaurant.
That is insane. So if you took the PPP loan and you tried to keep your business afloat and it didn't work out, you still have to pay taxes. Either this was an unintended consequence, or this was just an unbelievably horrible, immoral, corrupt scam. Wow. The stuff that the government told people to try to take, the small business owners, restaurants, to try to take the PPP loans, and the reality, it turns out to be the exact opposite.
That took the money back in March and April, and you just couldn't make it and you shut down. The government's going to come knocking on your door, because that is going to be considered a personal loan to you, because in a partnership, everything flows through to you as a partnership.
Right.
And that's true for every business.
So I guess the key question is, did you know this when you took the money? Was this clear at the outset?
Not at all. It was presented to us that it was a grant. And basically the way we looked at it, and everybody else I know looked at it, is we hired people back. In my business, we had furloughed almost 1,800 people. We brought almost everyone back. We had them doing work. Our restaurants weren't even open, but we brought them on because the government was paying them, not us. Everyone looked at it as, and actually it was a great program. Instead of the unemployment office getting even more people than they had, maybe 10 times as many as they got. It looked to we had to pay them to put them on. So I was having people just sit around doing nothing because the government was paying them. Would I have brought them back if I knew I was going to be paying a 30 to 50% tax on that money? No, none of us would have.
Right. No, that makes absolute sense. So you're in the business of projecting what the future looks like. What does the future look like for restaurants? When does the crunch happen for them?
That is a great question. The crunch has already happened. I was on your show 2 weeks ago, and I said August 1st was when the bell tolls, and it's tolling now. 15% of restaurants have already shut down in this country. If you're not back to 70 to 80% of pre-pandemic sales, you're done. There's no way you can get there. Landlords are tired of forbearing rent, or because their lenders are no longer allowing them to do that, and so you're just shutting the door. You'll see in the next 30 days another 10% of United States restaurants shutting down. Look at the Wall Street Journal and New York Times in the last few days talking about restaurants in New York City shutting down. Even something as simple as a Subway. I think Subway shut 20 to 30 of their New York City locations down permanently. And so it's a snowball that is rolling down, and now throwing this taxable event on top of all of us. I mean, are you kidding me? What is, and it's both houses that are doing this. And I don't think anyone is speaking up for small business. Both parties say they're the party of small business. They're sure not acting that way. No. If one of them would stand up and say, we are for small business, they would treat it the way it was presented to us and not bait and switch the American enterprise.
In just in a sentence, do you think they'd do this to Google or Amazon?
No, great question. I'm just worried about my own business every day. But, small business is the backbone of the United States. And look, the McDonald's didn't take it. The big companies didn't take it. It's the small businesses that they just can't compete.
And they're
thank you for letting me get my message across.
Well, I appreciate it.
Okay, I think that's enough. Wow, that is absolutely horrible. But for those of you who have listened to the Wall Street for Main Street YouTube channel for a while, what is rule number 1? Rule number 1 is governments change the rules all the time, especially in a crisis scenario, because that gives the government more justification, another excuse, and that's the crux of the situation. But this fits in with Stagflate and Tax and Lie, and you heard it there. It's a Trump administration involved. He said the U.S. Treasury, it was a bait and switch, rules changes from the U.S. Treasury to try to tax that money. They're going after it. They're going to tax your $1,200 stimulus check too. So the people who spent it, you're going to get taxed on that. And this is all part of Stagflate and Tax and Lie. There was a Zero Hedge story that came out on July 5th that 80% of New York City restaurants couldn't afford June rent. And there's estimates out there from different national restaurant associations and others over the last couple months that 85% of independent restaurants may go out of business by the end of 2020. So welcome to dystopia. Meanwhile, the stock market, the paper asset prices, the Dow is up slightly and the other indexes are fairly high. So the reality, the real economy, the commercial real estate bubble, the restaurants, the bricks and mortar retailers, there are businesses that are doing pretty well right now, but they're going to be cutting back on their commercial real estate leasing, their office space. So that's going to hurt the commercial real estate bubble. The worst near-term problem that's coming in the not-too-distant future is the commercial real estate bubble. And again, I warn you about Wells Fargo Bank. Wells Fargo Bank has the most exposure, the largest commercial real estate loan book. They did not trade nearly as many over-the-counter derivatives as the other large banks. They tried to focus on lending into the real economy, and before the pandemic, this reduced risk for them. But now, because of the pandemic, the real economy has been hurt more than paper asset prices because it's much harder for the Fed to try to fix the real economy. They don't want to fix it anyway, but even if they wanted to, it's much harder for them to fix the real economy than to actually prop up asset prices in nominal terms. So I have a number of different stories here about the restaurant industry, but again, this fits well with rule number 1, and rule number 1, if you're new to my YouTube channel, is governments will change the rules all the time, and all they really need is the justification for a crisis scenario. And this also fits in, unfortunately, with Stagflate and Tax and Lie. This would be in the tax camp and lie camp too, so it's a double whammy here. Really, really sad for the restaurant owners and the small business owners. Absolutely horrible. They were trying to help the country out, and the government did a bait and switch, did a roles change, and even if their restaurant failed, it looks like they're going to get hit with a big tax bill on their personal income taxes for 2020. Absolutely horrible. You want to talk about deplorables? It's absolutely deplorables. All the scumbags in Congress and the Treasury Department, if this proves to be true. Okay, so I have one super chat here. I've been watching Eric Sprott, Jonathan Howe. He is a Patreon account contributor, one of over 1,000 per month. So thank you, Jonathan, for the $5 super chat. I've been watching Eric Sprott YouTube videos, and he has a few junior mining stock recommendations. How good is his track record on picking juniors? Eric Sprott has a very good track record on picking juniors. However, Eric Sprott is a billionaire many times over, and Eric Sprott can afford losses on juniors. I get emails and Patreon messages and comments under videos and comments in the live chat demanding I answer them about junior mining stock picks, and people telling me that there's some people out there that tell me that they bought every single junior mining stock that Eric Sprott has ever bought or mentioned on a podcast. Well, are you successful? Are you rich? Can you afford losses? So this is about risk and reward. This is about, can you afford the losses on the junior mining stocks if they do not work out? So even though Eric Sprott is a very good junior mining stock picker, that doesn't mean all of his picks are going to work out. Eric Sprott can afford losses. Eric Sprott is a billionaire. So if he loses 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, maybe even 100 million, it's not going to hurt him financially too much. Maybe he takes a few less vacations. Maybe he doesn't get as many offers for board of directors, or he doesn't get to own 10% or 20% of companies. He doesn't get to buy as many companies as he wants. But for the average person out there, can you afford to speculate and buy all these junior mining stocks? Can you afford the losses if they do not work out? For me personally, in my opinion, I do not speculate on a lot of junior mining stocks. I tend to, I do play juniors, but I play them a lot safer. So I've talked about this publicly. I have shares in Sprott Inc., which has a lot of investments into juniors. They do lending to junior producers, and then also the royalty and streaming companies like a Sandstorm Gold, they buy royalties on juniors, and they have geologists screen this out. So there are safer ways to play juniors, but if you cannot afford the losses, why are you speculating and going and buying every single junior mining stock that Eric Sprott buys? So people have to really understand their risk tolerance, and they have to be very careful and think about if they can actually afford the losses. Is there enough money coming in from your paycheck or your other investments where if those junior mining stocks crashed, because even though gold and silver prices are probably over the next couple of years going to go up a lot higher, some of these junior mining stock picks are not all going to work out. There's going to be problems with them. There's going to be junior miners that have problems trying to build a mine, or they're going to have problems getting permits from government. There's a ton of problems that juniors can have. The management teams at some of these juniors could be fraudsters out of Vancouver, and there's a lot of fraudsters out of Vancouver. That whatever the hot commodity is, whether that was gold and silver mining stocks from like 2002 to 2013 or 14, gold and silver junior miners, they were raising a lot of capital during that time period. Even in 2008 and 2009, when the markets crashed, people were so optimistic that gold and silver prices were going to go back up. A lot of people did buy the dip, and in that crowd out of Vancouver, then they went into, I think, they got out of uranium. They were in uranium pumping that for a while. I think then they went into marijuana stocks, and then they went into altcoins and initial coin offering crypto companies, and then they went into lithium companies. I get messages and emails, Patreon messages and emails all the time asking me about lithium. I do not like lithium. There is a lot of lithium supply. There's a lot of larger lithium miners in Chile and Argentina that have plenty of lithium that are already producing it low cost, that can bring it online quickly. Rick Rule has said that nickel is the play if you want to play electric vehicles. Rick Rule of Sprott. So, and there's really only a couple large nickel producers because nickel is mostly a byproduct. There's a few nickel juniors, but I think a lot of them, it's like a tiny amount of the deposit, so because it is a byproduct. So it depends, Jonathan, on your, in a roundabout way, I try to answer this, depends on your risk tolerances and if you can afford the losses. If you can't afford the losses, I would be very careful investing in juniors and in individual junior mining stock companies. There are some safer juniors that are a little bit safer. There's an article that I just put out for patrons yesterday about a junior mining stock that looks like it has an enormous amount of potential. That's potentially going to be the highest grade gold and silver mine that's been found in a while. Well, other than Mag Silver's One Scipio. And it looks like there could be a bidding war for that. But it's still a junior, and there's still problems. There's still risk, I mean. There's still potential problems, and there's still risk. And I'm still going to get emails and Patreon messages from people that, you wrote an article about this junior, and I put all my money in this junior mining stock, and I didn't buy any of the other safer companies that you talked about. Well, why did you go and gamble on this one junior? You only saw the upside. You didn't see the risk. You have to look at things through a risk and reward framework. Okay, so your upside on that particular junior might be way more than double your money. But what if there's not a bidding war? What if the silver prices crash? There's always risk. People do not, most of these newsletter writers do not talk about risk and reward framework. They do not talk about the downside risks. They only talk about the upside. I've read a lot of newsletters. I've gotten them for free. I paid for them. I've worked in the newsletter industry. I worked at Investing Daily for a full year and got multiple promotions there and worked on different newsletters with experienced newsletter writers. The newsletter industry, there are some very smart people there. There is some good analysis there sometimes, but overall, the industry does not do a good job highlighting risks. Super chat from Daniel Ashley. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. He says, don't forget to upvote. So thank you very much for that. I think that's it for this short little video. I have some other things planned, so we'll see. I have to go find a new recording software, it looks like, because the people at Zoom are just horrible. I spent $150 on Zoom Pro before the pandemic trying to upgrade the quality of my audio, and for 4 or 5 months it was good, and now like it's totally unreliable. I've had so many problems with recording software programs. It's just ridiculous. Okay, so all the restaurant articles, if you want to read more about them over the last couple months, will be here. But bottom line, another government bait and switch, part of the Stagflate and tax and lie scheme. And unfortunately, rule number 1, where governments can routinely change the rules, even ex post facto, is going to be the new normal, the really, really sucky dystopian new normal.